In this video, we are going to install and configure WSUS on Windows Server 2016. So the first thing we need to do is, of course, install update services as a role. Now, after WSUS is installed, before we continue, I recommend that you update your WSUS server from the internet or whatever other source you can. The reason I recommend this is because it could be that without any quality updates, the feature might not be the most stable. So I updated my server from the internet beforehand. I hope it will work without any bugs. Without being said, let's begin actually configuring WSUS because we have just installed it for now. First, I want to create a folder where it will place all of its files. And the next thing is a initialization process in which it will create all of its content in the folder we just made. Great. So now that we have WSUS installed, I want to show you that it also has a couple of Powershell commandlets that can be pretty useful if you want to automate a couple of the WSUS tasks. And we will use some of these right now. So let's go and actually configure what we need. First, we will get a reference to the WSUS server itself. Then we get the configuration. And now we start configuring WSUS. First, I want to tell it that it has to synchronize from Microsoft Update. So this will be its update source. In order to do that, in my case, it will need a proxy, and this is how we set it. Tell it that you want to use a proxy, and you give it the proxy address, and if needed, the proxy port. Let's save for now what we did. Next, I do not want it to get updates in different languages, so I will set this to false, and I will tell it I only want updates in English. Save again. The next thing I want to set is the targeting mode, and I want to set it to client targeting. This means that instead of me from the WSUS console moving clients around in different groups, for example, I tell the client using group policy that it should be in the critical group or in the test group or whatever. So basically group policy will be used to tell the clients how to install the updates from WSUS. And this is the setting that lets WSUS work like this. Now the next thing we have to do is actually populate WSUS with different products, because right now it's installed but it doesn't know that, for example, Windows Server 2016 exists or Windows 10 exists. So we have to synchronize from Microsoft all of its product catalog. So we get a subscription and we start an initial synchronization for the Microsoft products, and we have two commands with which we can see the status. First is this one that will show us that the job is running. In case you see not processing, then it means you are safe to continue because it finished. And this command, the second one, will actually show us at which point it is. Unfortunately, from what I saw, this doesn't really work, so it will never show us any processed items, it will just finish at some point. And be aware that this might take a couple of minutes, so I will continue when it is done. And after a very long wait, at last it's finished. So with this done, we have one more thing to do regarding the first setup steps. Let's initialize the OOB, which will cause the WSUS console to not prompt us each time we open it to configure it. So let's move on to more interesting things. Now that we have the Microsoft product catalog, we can select what products interest us so we can receive updates for them. And of course, in this scenario, we are only interested in getting updates for Windows Server 2016. So the next two commands will do exactly this. It will disable everything that is not Windows Server 2016. Let me correct this here. And it will enable only Windows Server 2016. So let's run the first command. And now the second command, and we should get only updates for this operating system. And the same thing we have to do also for update categories. I want only a couple of categories, so I will disable everything else and enable only what I need. And this is the way to do these two steps. Next, unfortunately, since now we have the product that we want, we have to get a list of all the updates for that product. This means another synchronization. So we will start the synchronization, and like before with these two commands you can get the status and also a detailed progress report. So the status should say again running, and in progress now you will actually see when it's done indexing the total items it has and what it processed until now. But you see we have in total 373 items and it already processed 5 of them. Don't worry, it will take some time. So just sit back, relax, drink a coffee or two, and I'll see you when this is done. And after another long waiting period, also this part is done. So we have also the updates, not the updates themselves, but the metadata about the updates downloaded. The next part is the creation of target groups. If you remember, we set WSUS to let the clients set their target group, so to use client targeting. For example, if you have a couple of OUs, for example servers, and under servers you have an OU named general, you could set for that OU a group policy to target the general target group in WSUS. Thus you could approve different updates for different target groups. We will see this in a second. First, let's create the group, and also we will take a look in the graphical interface of WSUS to see how this all looks. But right now I created a group called servers. I will get a reference to that group, and I will create a subgroup or a child group called general. And so we have something to test with. Let's approve an update from the update list on the server's target group. So with get WSUS update we will get a list of all the updates in WSUS. Then we will select the first one after we skip 30, so a random update. Then we are going to approve it to be installed on servers that target the servers group. Simple enough. Let's run the command. And it's done. We will see in a very short while what update we chose in the graphical interface. But before then, I want also to do one quick fix. WSUS might encounter some problems if we don't run the following commands, in the sense that you could find that your application pool for WSUS from time to time will stop. and if you do what I show here, it will fix this problem, but of course you have to adapt for your environment the values that I set in these commands. So let's import the web administration module. Let's set the first item, then let's create a new time span and set the second item. And lastly, we have to restart the WSUS application pool. Now, before we continue with group policy, let's take a look at the WSUS console. So you'll see it here, Windows Server Update Services. Let's also pin it to the Start menu because we will need it further. And this is how it looks. Everything is under the server. And first, let's go to options. I want to show you a couple of things that we did. In Update Source and Proxy Server, you remember I told it to update from Microsoft Update and to use this proxy server. So this is where you see those settings. In Products and Classifications, we selected only Windows Server 2016. And we selected only a handful of classifications, if you remember. Also in Update Files and Languages, we disabled all languages and enabled only English. So this is where you see this setting. This is something that we did not do and we don't need, the synchronization schedule. But you can set a specific time and the number of synchronizations per day. Also, we did not configure automatic approvals for updates, so when WSUS gets new updates, how they should be approved. In computers, this is the setting where we set that we want client targeting, otherwise we would have had this set. The server cleanup wizard is actually a pretty cool feature. From time to time it's good to run it so it deletes old and unneeded files, and it also cleans up the database, so sometimes it will take less to find updates when you run this. And mostly this is it. And the configuration wizard is what we set to skip so we never see it again. Now if we move on, in the updates list, of course, we see the updates that we have. And if we set the status filter to any and the approval to unapproved, we can see all the updates in WSUS that we have right now. If we select approved, we should see only the update that we approved earlier. And unfortunately, it's not something that we can use because it's for a different version of Windows Server 2016. So let's get the unapproved ones and select something ourselves. Let me select something that I am sure the server will install. For example, I would say that the servicing stack is something good, but let's see by title. Or Windows malicious software removal tool also sounds like something that is a sure thing. But let's approve this one, and we can approve it on servers for installation, and now it will go and download it. And let me find one more thing to approve. Let's approve, for example, the servicing stack. This also is something that is useful, and I'm sure it will be found by our server. Since this actually is not really needed, let me also show you how to remove the approval. So to decline an update, just right click, press decline, press yes, and the update now is declined. And as long as you see this message, it means that a specific update has not yet been downloaded from Microsoft. So I see this one also has the same thing. Okay, so while this is going on, let's move from updates and show you the computers part. In all computers, we have unassigned computers, and then we have the group that we just created. And the general group is where we will place our test server using group policy. In downstream servers is where we would see a server list with servers that would use this one as its primary source for updates. If, for example, you have a headquarters and a couple of offices and you want WSUS in each office, you would connect the headquarters WSUS server to the internet and the office servers to that one. In synchronizations, you will see a list of all of your syncs that have been made. And for now, we will not get into reports. We will see them a little later because there is still something left to do in order to make reports work. So with all the settings done on the WSUS server, let's move on and also create a group policy so we can configure clients to go to this server and install updates. I will copy this link because we will need it. And now I am on the domain controller. First, in test corp we see we have an OU called servers. I want also to create an OU called general so that we can mimic our WSUS target groups. And in this OU I will move a test server, for example IPAM01. So we will use this one to test our updates. Move here. With this done, we can now create the group policy that I talked about. Let's create it and link it to this OU. And I'll call it updates general. And the settings are actually very simple. In policies, in administrative templates, in Windows components, we go to Windows Update and let's sort by alphabetical order and check it out. In enable client-side targeting, we set it to enable and we say that all the servers that get this policy will belong to the general group in WSUS. So you see, this is the way that we link these two things together. And we need to do one more thing, is to specify intranet Microsoft Update service location. And here we just have to specify the server with the port. In these two fields, it's enough. And with these two settings, now we can make updates. But just keep in mind the fact that we did not do any settings for automatic updating. So if you want automatic updates, you still have a couple of things to do. In our case, we will start the update process manually and see if it works. So no need to do anything more than we already configured. Okay, so let's now jump to IPAM01 and see how this works. On IPAM01, first, since we just assigned it a new group policy, we need to update the group policy on the server. And we use GP update force, of course. Now let's try and make a round of updates. It might be that it will not work from the beginning, but it should work if you try 2 or 3 times. Let's see. And while this is running, we have now a very quick way to find out if the server really applied the group policy and went, actually we don't need to. You see that it already found the 2 updates that we gave it, but let me go to the WSUS server and show you also what I wanted to show you. In WSUS now, if we go to general and set the filter to any, we should see our server, and this means that the group policy applied and it knows to contact WSUS. Of course, seeing that it found the 2 updates gives this away more easily. And you see that it made the first update, now it will also make the second one. Could be that it will also ask for a restart, I'm not sure, but the bottom line is that the updates worked. Now with this out of the way, I want to do one more thing, and I want to enable reports so we can have a nice way to view all the updates that are done and that remain to be done when you have a lot of updates and a lot of computers. In order to enable reports, we have a couple of things to do. First is we need to install .NET Framework 3.5. We talked about this in a previous video in this series, which you can see in the Windows Server 2016 Mega Series playlist. Also, you know, as always, the code can be downloaded from my GitHub page. So, for .NET Framework, we need to have the DVD of the Windows installation mounted, which I have here. And with that mounted, we only need to run this command and wait maximum 1 minute and we will have it installed. Next, we need to install 2 programs that we can get from Microsoft. I put the links here for both of them. And with these 2 executables, then we can view reports. So let's install the first one. I renamed it and placed it in C, as well as the report viewer. So let's run the start process for the first file. It will be very fast. It's done already. Let's install also the report viewer. And we need to close the WSUS console and open it again. Otherwise it will not see the changes. And you see it also finished installing. So let's open WSUS again. And now we can go to reports and we can actually see reports, as you can see here. The only problem in my case is that the report would be very boring with only one server. But you get the idea, you can see a lot of information with this. And actually with the reports we are also done with this video. So from the beginning to end we installed and configured WSUS, we also tested it, we made reports work, everything with PowerShell. Or almost everything with PowerShell. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and share it. Also please subscribe, and thanks a lot for watching.